pecorino, guanciale, black pepper, and fresh eggs.
You'll need a scraper, your semolina flour, and the proper amount of water. To start, we're going to work in a bowl, and you'll want to make a little hole to pour the water into. You can use one finger like I'm demonstrating here to start the mix, and then you'll want to use your hands to really squeeze everything together quickly. There's no reason to spend a lot of time getting your dough into a ball. At the end, you'll want to use your dough like a wet rag to clean out the inside of your bowl and get up all the dry ingredients that are left. We'll be spending 5 minutes kneading the dough. 5 minutes is good enough to be able to develop the elasticity that we'll need to keep the dough together to make our stringozzi. This should be a nice, slow massage, and you'll end up having a very smooth, soft ball of dough like you see here. To make sure you have enough elasticity, use your finger, press lightly, and if you see a little bounce but the impression remains, you're good. Put it under a bowl to keep it from drying out. After 10 minutes of resting your dough, just long enough for it to absorb all the humidity and rehumidify uniformly, you'll want to use your hands starting in the middle, as you see here, and pulling out to make your ribbons of pasta. If it's too long, cut it in half and work the two parts separately. There's no strict rule as to how long your stringozzi have to be. And in fact, we're calling these Stringozzi because we're in Rome and making a carbonara today. But you'll find this shape in Tuscany as well under the name Pici. Remember not to make them too thick because when they go into the water and rehydrate, they'll plump up quite a bit. You'd want to get them as even and as thin as possible so that they have a nice texture in your mouth in the finished plate. Instead of cutting off little bits with your scraper like I demonstrated previously, you can also roll out your piece of dough with any kind of rolling pin to about 1/2 inch or a couple of millimeters thick. Then you'll take your scraper and cut off thin strips that help you start the process of making the stringozzi by hand. Be sure to put the remaining dough under your bowl so it doesn't dry out. This technique of rolling out a flat piece and cutting off thinner strips might be a little easier for uniformity for beginners. And there you go. We'll just finish up the rest of the dough and meet you back at the end of the video to see the finished carbonara.
Start prepping your ingredients. I usually start with the guanciale because it takes a good amount of time to cook, as you will see. Cut it into strips and then into cubes or little allumettes. Grate your pecorino cheese last minute. Don't be tempted to do this ahead of time and save it in the fridge, as it loses a lot of its flavor. All cheeses oxidize fast and dry out, so you don't want to do this an hour or two before. You do it when you need it. As you can see, I'm using only the egg yolks because they yield a much creamier consistency for your carbonara sauce. Pepper also should be prepared last minute. Never buy pre-ground pepper, has very little flavor and like many spices it oxidizes. Add cheese to your eggs and mix right away. This can be done a little bit ahead of time, but not too long. Usually at room temperature, I never leave my raw eggs more than 2 hours. After you mix, and if you're not ready to cook, you can cover with plastic film and leave it at room temperature. Guanciale should be cooked ahead of time because it takes a good amount of time to render its own fat. If you use bacon, sometimes it's not as fatty as guanciale. In that case, you might want to start the melting / cooking of the fat with a little bit of pork fat, rendered pork fat. If you use oil, you definitely change the flavor of this recipe. This has taken me about 10 minutes to get to this stage. I did add a tad of water, which evaporates, but helps melting the fat without burning the guanciale too much. Here is the amount of fat rendered that we need. We do not discard because that's what gives flavor to the finished pasta. Boil your pasta in a small pot with salty water. The reason I'm using a small pot is because I need this pasta water to be starchy after the pasta is ready. And I will be using some of this water as a thickener and to temper the eggs. When the pasta is al dente, you will transfer the pasta into the hot guanciale without draining it too much. We need some of that water so that the pasta can keep cooking, absorb the flavor, and not sticking to the pan. Toss your pasta for about a minute. Add extra water if necessary. Then, when you're done, turn off the heat. Temper the eggs by adding a little bit of starchy water. This will prevent them from scrambling and it will be an extra thickener. transfer your boiling hot pasta in the eggs and immediately start stirring so that the cream forms and it coats your noodles evenly. Transfer into a hot serving dish. Finish with freshly ground black pepper. And of course another handful of cheese. And there you have it.
Happy Carbonara Day, everyone!
Buon appetito!